Let's talk about the list data structure. List, also known as arrays, is a collection of items stored at contiguous memory locations. The idea is to store multiple items of the same type together. Some important things to know about lists is that they are indexable, and everything inside a list can be commonly referred to as elements, items, or also values. Lists are implemented as dynamic arrays internally with Python. List order is maintained but can be changed, and because they can be changed, a list is classified as a mutable data structure, which means that items can be added and removed at any point in time with ease. Lastly, lists allow for duplicate values, unlike the set data structure. So now let's move on to creating and initializing list items. And here you can see there are many ways to create and initialize list. But first, let's take our focus to this snippet of code right here. Here we are creating a list called fruits, which for every value is a fruit being a string data type. Apples, bananas, cherries, oranges, and grapes. And if we go ahead and run this file, we can see that right below the create list is this list that we printed out right here. A very common method that we use with list is the len keyword, where if we pass in the iterable object being the fruit and print it out, we see that the length of the fruit list is the size of 6. Now let's talk about some cool ways to initialize list. Here is one very cool way. Here what we're doing is we are initializing a list with 5 elements, all with a default value of 1. All you do is multiply this list by a value of 5, and they will all be defaulted to 1. And this can be true to any data type. You could do a boolean being true or false, or a string, an integer like this one, or a float, and it will initialize each value to that data type by default. And here we see that we're creating a list of string data types. Here we are creating a list of integer data types. Boolean data types are created here, and here, list 4, you can see that we are creating a variety of data types that are inside this list, being strings, integers, booleans, and floats. And now here we are creating a list using the list keyword with opening and closing parentheses. This is going to create an empty list, as we see right here when we print this out. And here we could use the list to pass in a iterable collection, which is wrapped around these parentheses. And when we print it out, we could see that it is also a list because it is using this list keyword. And if you want to create a list that is very long, ranging from 1 to 1,000, it's a very, very tedious task to write all those out. So instead, you can use the range function to then just initialize a list of size 1,000, just like this. And then you could also use list and then specify the iterable object that you want to pass in, like fruits, and then just create a list that way. And then just to see what type of data type this is, you can see that when printing type of list, you can see that it is of class list. Okay, now moving on to different ways of accessing list items. What you want to do is you want to refer to the list variable and then opening and closing brackets and pass in an indexed value. If we pass in an index value of 1, we will be referring to this element right here, dog. We printing out right here. It's good to know that list is a 0 index based data structure implemented in Python, which is good. And yeah, so if we access the value of 0, we will get the very first item being cat. Okay, and then if we access the value of -2, what the negative value does is that it refers to the back of the list, and -2 will refer to this one. If we do -1, it will refer to the very end of the list, right? And these are all O of 1 time operations, big O of 1, and that is why lists are very fast in lookup time. But if we use the slicing method specified by using this colon, it's going to be a O of k time operation where k is the size of the slice. And it's going to start at index 2 and end at index 5, but not including 5. So index 2 is going to start here, horse, and it's going to end at elephant right here because that is the 4th index, and it's not going to reach the 5th index properly. And so therefore, if we print it out, we're going to get horse, lions, and elephants just like that. And then here, if we do not specify the beginning stage, it's going to default to 0 and then end at 4, but not reaching it. And if we do not specify an ending stage, it is going to slice all the way to the end. Remember, these are all O of k time operations. As you can see right here, this one does slice all the way to the end. And also, you could also use negative values, uh, starting from -4 all the way to -1, but not including. And you will get a list that looks like this: horses, lions, and elephants, where horses is -4 specified. To check if a item is within a list, you can use the in keyword. So if lion in animals, this is a O of n time operation, because if lion is at the very end of the list, then in the worst case, we will have to iterate through the entire array and see where lines are located. If it is in there, it's going to be true, and then this condition will be ran. And as you can see, it is true because this condition did run. And also, another common thing to know is that you can access these items using a for loop for I in range, starting from 0, ending at the very last element. And if we print out animals from I, where I embodies all the numbers from 0 to the very last using this length keyword, we will probably be able to print out every single animal inside this list. So that's a good way of accessing list items. Okay, now moving on to the changing list items. So if you want to change a value inside a list, what you want to do is you want to refer to that list and then that index at where we want to change it, and then change its value, right? So here we're creating a list called cars, holding Ford, BMW, Mercedes, Audis, and Bentley. And we want to change the very first index. At index 0, we want to change Ford to a Koenigsegg, right? And doing this will change that index of 0 value. And then here, if you want to change multiple values using a slice method, you can do that also, but make sure to use these closing and opening brackets. We want to change the values at index 1 and at index 2, being McLaren and Porsche, right? So these two will be not in there, and these two will be now replaced. These two will be replaced with these values. And then another way is using this insert method. We want to insert Lamborghini at index 3. What's this going to do is that it's going to go to 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's going to insert Lamborghini here, and then move everything else after that value, after Lamborghini. And we can see that when we print the cars array, we can see right here that it's going to be a Koenigsegg, Lamborghini, Porsche, McLaren, my bad, and then Audi, Bentley. And then we can see that the size of this array is 6 using the length keyword again. Okay, now let's move on to adding list items. So here are some common methods that we use when adding list items. If we use append, it's going to add it to the very end. What you want to do is you want to reference the list and dot append, and then append the value that you want to put at the end of the list. If you want to do insert, you're going to be able to insert it wherever you want inside this list. So if you want to insert 20 at index 3, it will happen right here and move everything else after the value 20. If you want to extend the list, what you want to do is you want to pass in an iterable object, and what that's going to do is also going to add all these elements to the end of the list one by one, right? You can see right here that that is what is happening all the way till 90. And then we could do extend Neil Patel, which is my name. And since this string is an iterable object, it's going to break down each character and add it to the end, as you can see right here at the end, right? And as we print it out, that's why we're being able to see all these values. Now moving on to removing items, you can see here that we have a list initialized to color, having colors of yellow, red, green, and then another red, a blue, a purple, a pink, and a white. We have 2 reds because lists do allow duplicate values, which is good. If you want to remove red, what that's going to do is that it's going to remove the first occurrence of the specified item, right? So you want to specify the item when calling the remove method for these list objects. It's going to remove this red right here, but it's going to keep this red. And then also, if you want to pop an item, you can do so just by color.pop. What that's going to do is that it's going to pop the very last item and also return it. So this popped item is going to store the string data type white. If you want to pop a specified index, then this is going to be an O of n time operation because you have to find where that index is. It's going to be at position -2 since we already removed red and we removed white. We're going to remove the value at -2, which is going to be purple, and so that one will be removed because pink is at -1, right? And if we want to delete an index but we don't know what the value is, right, then you could do the del and then color and then reference the index at where you want to delete it, and that will remove that item inside the colors list. So 0, 1, 2, 3 will remove blue. It's going to remove blue because this red was already removed, right? And then when we go ahead and print that colors out, we're going to see yellow, green, red, and pink, right? Because this blue was removed, this purple was removed. Now moving on, let's do the clear keyword. All you have to do is reference the color list dot clear. What that's going to do is delete every single item inside the colors list, but the colors list will still exist, right, in memory. But if you delete color, then that's going to delete the entire array, and you no longer have access to this variable or the list. And then if you want to remove an item by index, you could just do this like we saw earlier. I just wanted to write this again because this is a very important thing. So when you go ahead and print that out, you're going to get an array like this, where we have 1, 9, 10, 3, 4, 5. If we delete the item at index 1, which is going to be a 9, you will get this output. Now let's talk about looping through list. You could loop through list using for loops or while loops. And please don't mind these print statements where they're just there to properly separate everything to look nice and pretty in this terminal right here. So what you want to do is you want to do for, and then the iterable that right here, which is going to be cars, for item in cars. We're going to refer to each item as a car variable, and all we have to do is just print car to see all these car values. And we're going to separate them by commas, as we see right here, which is going to be Koenigsegg, McLaren, Porsche, Lamborghini, Audi, and Bentley. Another way to do it is using the range keyword for I in range. Length of cars, I is going to now hold every single index value for cars, and all you have to do is do cars and then have some brackets like these parentheses right here, brackets opening and closing, and reference that index to then access that value inside the cars list, right? So here we have them printing out. At index 0, we're going to have a Koenigsegg. At 1, we have McLaren, and so on and so forth. And then another way to do this, which is a much simpler syntax as opposed to this printed if statement, we have the enumerate keyword. You do for I car in enumerate cars. So cars is the iterable that we are accessing, and I is going to hold the index value, and cars is going to be every single value at that position I, right? So we don't have to really use car I like this to get the value of it, right? And so this will also be printed out just like this, same thing, using the enumerate, very nice. And then here you could use list comprehension to also print out every value. For X in cars, cars is the iterable collection list, and X is going to embody every single value within that list. And as you print out X, we're going to print out every single car inside the cars list, just like this. And then you can also use a while loop like this, which is the same thing as a for loop. You initialize a I equal to 0. While I is less than length of cars, you print out that cars at I value, which is going to be the value at the ith index. And then you want to increment I. If you don't increment I, you'll fall into an infinite loop where the first value of cars will be printed infinitely, right? Okay, now let's move on to list comprehension. This is a perfect segue as we talk about list comprehension right here. What you want to do is you want to use this syntax right here. For the item in the iterable, you're going to perform this operation, right? Which is going to be right here. You're going to add this item to the list. So here we see that we are creating a list called triples, and for I in range 11 from 0 to 10 inclusive, right? Basically, we're going to get the ith value and multiply by 3. And as we see, that all these values are going to be stored inside this list that we create using list comprehension. When we go ahead and print out triples, we're going to get a multiples of 3 collection from 0, 3, 6, 9, 12, 18, 21, 24, 27, 30, right? Because we're multiplying every ith index by a value of 3. Now here, we are creating an array. We are creating an array of names, and these are all names, right? John, Blade, Bob, and Blue. But all their first characters, they're all lowercase, right? And if we want to make them uppercase, we could use list comprehension, something like this. For people in names. So names is an iterable object that we pass in, and people is going to be every single value inside names. It's going to be John, and then Bob, and then Blade, and then it's going to keep on going, right? So what we want to do is you want to access the very first character and make it uppercase. And then you want to add every other character to the end of it, and all that is going to be added inside this list, right? Using list comprehension. And then when we print name upper, we could see that all the names within the list are now uppercase, just like this. You can also use list comprehension to notify if all the values inside the list are true or false. So here we're creating for value in, this iterable being the array, 0 and an empty list or empty strings. These are all classified as falsy values. So when we go ahead and print that out, we're going to get false, 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 and true because 66 is a true value in Python. Now, let's add some conditional logic to list comprehension. Here we are creating a numbers array, more numbers, right? Formatted sequentially, ranging from 1 to 9. And what we're doing here is for value in more numbers being the iterable, values embodying every single value here, if value modulo 2 is equal to 0. What that means is that if the value is an even number, we're going to add it to the even numbers list. And we can see that when we print it out, it is going to be added properly. Now let's take a look at this list right here, cool numbers. So let's start here for numbers in more numbers. More numbers is the iterable collection, and we're going to reference each item with nums. And if nums modulo 2 is equal to 0, so if the value is even, then we are going to raise it to the second power. Else, we're going to raise it to the third power. And you can see right here that we are properly doing that right here with cool numbers when we print it out. All right. And now let's move on to some common list method. We already looked at these right here, but we could quickly talk over them. So we're creating a data all with numbers. When we append to the end. When we insert the value of 200 at index 4, like so. When we data.extend, this is going to be iterable. This will add all these iterable objects to the end of the list. When we go ahead and print that out, we can see that it is printed just like this, right? 200 is right there, 100 is right there. This list is at the end, just like this. And this is just one object it will add to the end, right? Now let's do pop. Pop will also return the value that we removed. So if we do pop the very last element, if we do pop this one, then what we're going to do is that it's going to pop this collection right here because it was inserted at the very end, right? And then if we do pop the element at index 1, is going to be a value of 2 because 2 is at index 1. If we remove 4, then 4 will be removed. This value will be removed and it will print a none value. Now, if you want to access the data at index 1, it's going to get the position, which is going to be at index 0, right? And if we do count, if we do count 1, how many times does 1 appear in this list? It's going to appear a total of 2 times, right? It appears here and it appears here. So that's what count does. And then if we do data.sort, what this is going to do is that it's going to sort the data array in place. This is a n log n time operation, right? And if we do data.reverse, it's going to reverse that list in place as well. So, and then if we go ahead and print data, we're going to get this list right here. Another way to do this is by doing data.sort and then reverse equals true, right? If you don't want to write all these lines of code, you could also just write this code. And then if you do not want to sort that data in place and sort it and store it to a new variable, you could use sorted and pass in the data as the argument. And new data will now be the sorted version of data. Okay, now we're creating another list called iPhone, ranging from iPhone 6 to iPhone 15. And if we do iPhone string is equal to this empty space dot join iPhone, what this is going to do is that it's going to take this iterable collection and join it all together and add spaces between each value in this list. And when we go ahead and print that out, when we go print out phone string, we could see that these are all string values like this. If we print out the type, it is in fact a type string. Okay, and now let's move on to list slicing. List slicing is a very beneficial thing when it comes to Python list, as we can access a variety of ranges inside the list. So what I mean by that is that you can access the list in a backwards motion like this if you pass in a -1 and default values ranging from start to end. What this is going to do is going to flip everything backwards, right? Because -1 will start from this side and go all the way to the beginning. And this is a O of n time operation because you're iterating through the entire list in this place. But then if you specify your start index being 1 and your end index being all the way to the end, since this is a positive number, this is going to go in the positive direction. This 2 will also have like a step count, which is going to be a count of 2. So it's going to jump twice every single time starting at 1. So it's going to be 2, 4, 6, 8, and then that's it. And this is going to be a O of n divided by k time operation, where k is the step of the size, because we are only iterating through a finite amount of of items inside this list. Therefore, you could classify the big O like this. And then another way, if you don't want to specify, if you do want to specify the items at the beginning when doing the reverse order, you could do length of the array 7, which will start at the very end because the length of this is size 9, and so it's going to end at the very beginning too. So from 9 size all the way to the beginning, going in the backwards direction will give you something like this. These are also going to give you the same output because here we're starting at size 8, where this is at index value of 8, right? And it's going to start from 8 and end at 0. It's going to go in the negative direction, therefore it will print out everything accordingly. But then if we end at index 0, it's not going to be an inclusive, right? So this 0 is not inclusive, it's going to stop at 2, and therefore that's why you see this one does stop at 2. If you specify a very large index value to start off from, which is going to be 13, which is here, and then do not specify this one, it's going to end all the way at the end, and do it in the backwards motion, you could see that this will also give you the same output as well. And then if you want to have a step starting from the end, ending at the beginning, with a step of -2, you can see it's going to start from 9, 7, 5, 3, and 2, just like this. And then if you want to go in the negative direction and start at the value of index 2, which is going to be this one right here, then you're going to get that value, and you're going to end at the very beginning, which is 3, 2, 1 in that direction as well, because we're going reverse since it's -1. And yeah, it does look like I'm going in the reverse direction for most of these. So if you want to see, then we could add something like in the positive direction, print array 7, 7 in the positive direction like this. We could start at index 4 and at index 7, and then yeah, that's going to go in the positive direction. And if you want to specify a delimiter, it's 1 by default, but if you want to jump values, you could jump it like 3, but that's totally fine. So if we go ahead and print this out, so let's save it and then print it like print. Well, we see that we printed this value out right here, I believe. 5, 6, and 7. So 5 is at index 4, and then 7 is at index 6, right? And we don't want to include index 7 because that's not how Python works. Okay, and now moving on to changing items. So if you want to swap items, you could use the syntax like this. You're going to swap array value at index 0 with array value at index 1, right? So 1 is going to be swapped with the index value of 2, and this is a very fast way of doing swapping in Python. If we go ahead and print that out, that's what's going to happen. 1 will take place of 2, and 2 will take place of 1. Now let's move on to our last one, being nested list. You can see here we're creating a nested list where essentially every item inside the list is another list. And that's why we call them nested lists. It's a list within a list. So it's nested twice. It's a 2-dimensional list. And the way we want to iterate through this list is using double for loops. This has a O of n squared time operation, n squared, because as the list size grows, because we are not only are we accessing these values, but we are also accessing values inside the list, which has a size of n, which is also n times big. So that's why it is n squared. So what you want to do is you want to do for I in range length of nested. So nested is the array that we are calling it, and what that's going to do is length has the value of 4, being this is one value, this is another value, this is another value, and this entire list is another value. There are a total of 4 values inside this nested list. And then for j in range length of nested at index I, we're going to get every single length of this internal list. So here they all have length of 3s, right? So we're going to print them accordingly. If we do print nested at I, then we access the inner list. And then if we do j, then we're going to access the item. And so therefore, we will be able to properly access each item within this nested list. And then if we do end with the delimiter, we're going to print out 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to print out like this. And then once this for loop is done, because the length size is done with 3, we're going to print a new line. That's why we are going to the new line. And it continues forward. The I increments, so now it's going to access this index right here. So I is going to be 1 at 0, 1, and 2. Therefore, we are going to print out these values right here, and so on and so forth. Right? And then the last thing we're going to talk about is unpacking variables using like pairs and stuff. So here we're creating a list, and we could initialize each value inside this list to be its own variable like this: x, y, and z, where x embodies 10, y is going to be 20, and z is going to be 30, as so. And when we print it out, we do get those values like this. Okay, I hope you liked my list video and have a better understanding of how lists work in Python. I will see you guys in the next one.